Our first speaker tonight is Assaf. So, you know those fun quizzes you come across on Facebook, like which 90s love song describes you best, or what Disney character are you?
Love them!
You might have missed it, but Disney sure didn't, because Playbus came on their radar and they recently invested $50 million. Assaf Sagy, who is with us tonight, is the VP of International Markets. He currently leads the company's global strategy overseas in all global offices from North America to Beijing. Before joining Playbus, Assaf was the founder and CEO of a startup developing drones for extreme sports. Previously, he was an engagement manager with McKinsey in Chicago and Tel Aviv, focusing on marketing strategy for consumer companies. Assaf holds an MBA from the University of Chicago and a Bachelor of Science in Computer Engineering from the Technion Institute of Technology. So Assaf?
Thank you all for having me. So obviously the reason for me being here is that I belong to a list of very honorable entrepreneurs who miserably failed. And I'm going to share with you 3 stories about the time that I worked as an entrepreneur, that you'll understand the process and the journey that I've been through, and the learnings that I had. And those learnings look to me today pretty obvious, maybe even stupid. But when I was there, working on my venture, I didn't even understand that those problems exist. So let's start a little bit from my personal journey, how I got to be an entrepreneur. And I want you to think about me as good investors. And when you see my route, going through all those companies, you'll probably say, this guy is not crazy. I went to the Israel Institute of Technology. I was a very good student, and then quickly I went to Intel to be a system architect, and I worked on the coolest thing during that time. And then I went abroad to the United States to grad school. I even sticked around to work for McKinsey. So I moved from the technology side all the way to the business side. And I worked with pretty cool companies on the most interesting concepts of like Fortune 25 companies like Harley Davidson or Whirlpool. And I thought that I was ready. I thought that I could solve any business problem that I will be faced with. But you know what? Everyone makes mistakes. And so did I. And so will you, if you're planning to be a human being. And the smart thing to do is to make mistakes that are not going to impact your career in a fatal way, like the mistakes that I did. So, thank you. I'm just telling you that there will be 3 stories here, and I'm not going to go into the very last details, but I already know that when I tell about my projects, in this crowd, there will be about 5 or 10 people who either worked on the same problems and were extremely successful, or miserably failed, or just started working on them 2 months ago and think that this is the best thing since sliced bread. So I'm going to take you through these. The first problem that we faced is that we didn't know anything about our projects. The 2 projects that we worked on over the 2 years that we worked together were, one, I don't see the red point, never mind, a long-term savings problem, like a pension plan, but a digital one. And the other one was a consumer drone. So we came from backgrounds that were not at all connected to these problems. And we knew how to do only 2 things. One of them was to create mock-ups. So we created great mock-ups on Balsamiq. I don't know how many people in the crowd know this software, but this is what we did in the first 2 months, okay? And those mock-ups didn't take us very far. The other thing we knew how to do was market research. And we beat the shit out of the market research. We actually, on each one of those things, we learned everything. So, in the long-term savings space, we learned the regulations of 5 different Western countries. We actually interviewed people from the Ministry of Finance. We went to see how agents sell those products and face consumers. On the drone side, we analyzed the drone's architecture soup to nuts. We learned what is the software and what is the hardware, and how China is different from the US. And all that work didn't take us anywhere. We didn't learn anything that was important for us solving the problem. And what happened as a result was that we chose the wrong solutions to our problems. So to give you an example, when we worked on the consumer drone, we basically wanted that the drone will follow a user in a sports context, okay? When you ski, we wanted a drone to take a video selfie of you. And many companies are doing that, and I'm not saying anything bad or good about them, but the solution that we chose was pretty ridiculous. We chose a computer vision solution that looked very sexy to us because we weren't from the industry. While the better solution was just to put a radio chip on the user's wrist, okay? And you can buy those chips for 50 cents on AliExpress. And we didn't know that. We didn't even know that, and we didn't know that to develop a good computer vision system takes about a decade. So that's where we went, and obviously we faced very difficult issues. And that leads me to the next problem that we had. We tried to climb too many peaks together at the same time. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the first project, the financial project that we worked on. And can anyone from the crowd, by intuition, tell me what is the biggest problem for a startup that is working in the financial industry?
Too small.
Too small, someone said?
Regulation.
Regulation, thank you very much. This is the biggest problem, and we didn't know. We didn't know, and we started learning the regulation, and we started interacting with it, and they started interacting with us because they didn't like the fact that a startup wants to disrupt any existing players like banks or insurance companies. And boy, that costs a lot of money. And we took all the money that we invested and we spent it on lawyers who were very happy, by the way, because they could interact with Ministry of Finances while we didn't work on the real problem that we had to solve, which is what?
Customers.
The consumer. Because the consumer, when they think about financial problems, they say, not my problem, and I don't want to solve it now. And those dollars had to go to marketing. We had to persuade people to think about those long-term saving problems. And we didn't. Which actually depleted most of the funds that we were planning to use during the life of the startup. I personally, I think when I quantify this, I think I spent about $100,000 or $150,000 just on this entire venture, and I think that about 1/3 was spent on lawyers. And that leads me to the third problem that we faced, or the third learning. Now, all of these are personal learnings, by the way. I'm sure that all look pretty obvious to you guys, but they didn't look obvious to me. And what I'm going to show is a short film here that was from our drones project. Bear with me for 1 second. If you could help me read that while I speak about this. Okay. So this will take about 30 seconds and you'll enjoy it. And it shows two things. It shows the initial proof of concept that we did with a drone. You see me over there with a red shirt, and this is this is a toy drone, okay? This is a drone that can actually, anyone can fly, even kids from their phones, and we basically programmed it to follow a user that runs with a red shirt. And it all went pretty great. I mean, this was fantastic. When I walked, the drone, moved its nose and tracked me, or when I ran, and you'll see that example in a second, the drone was able to not lose me. And that helped us. That was a positive learning because very quickly afterwards, and you see, everything here, the drones analyzes, it's all great. We said, let's go industrial. Let's take a drone that is in the size of a lawnmower, a 4-kilogram drone that flies about 40 miles per hour. It can get to 200 meters in altitude. And let's, instead of putting the software on the ground, thank you, put it in an embedded system on the drone. Why don't we do that? And the drone did fly up, but we learned two things, The same issues that you have on your browser at home happen in an embedded system. So if you do a mistake in coding and there is an unplanned scenario, the drone could flip at 100 meters, drop to the ground, shatter it to pieces, and make you lose $1,500 in a second. There is a worse scenario that my co-founder over there in the crowd discovered. When he created an infinite loop, and the drone tried to focus on him, and it got very close to him and almost killed him because the drone doesn't know that there is a user at the end. And that's when we discovered that we're working on a product that should indulge consumers, but could by mistake hurt them or kill them, God forbid. And we understood that we're working on the wrong problem. So it's better to fail early than to fail late, because we could have created a lot of infrastructure before that and only discover it two years down the road. So, after that fun experience, which I appreciate and I would do again with my co-founders every given day, I decided to go to a place that I can learn something new. And I went to Playbuzz, that was presented earlier. And Playbuzz is a software company, and the worst thing we can do, like yesterday, is to show that Donald Trump won the presidential debate when he faced Hillary. Or for the Israelis in the crowd, that Yair Lapid could be the same as an IKEA catalog. And that's what I do right now. Questions?